Welcome to episode 62 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about a former player from the NTDP, now soon to join the Boston University Terriers, and he was drafted in the second round by the Washington Capitals this past draft in June. That is Cole Hutson. And so obviously we know Cole is the brother of Lane, but at the same time, Cole has a very unique individual skill set that makes him stand out. And he's going to be a really interesting player to watch come the future and come next season with BU because there's a lot of similarities between him and Lane and how they play. And Lane obviously translated really well and was a low draft pick in, I believe, the tail end of the second round a couple years prior to Cole by Montreal. And Cole ended up getting picked in the second round again. And in the future, he's going to make teams look foolish. He's definitely going to be a first round pick and worthy of that status in the future with how he's going to play. He's going to be a great defenseman in the NHL. He's going to continue to get better in his time at BU, and he's going to continue to develop in a fast track way. And I would totally see him being 2 years and done with BU because I'm not going to be surprised to see him really play well and really light it up next season. And when you look at the translatability of Cole Hutson's game, a lot of it is built on manipulation, deception. That's why I'm such a strong believer in his game and why it'll translate to the upper levels and not only beyond BU, but to the pro level and the NHL level as well, because the manipulation, the deception is especially hard to have as a defenseman. And being able to have that requires a lot of longevity to be able to manipulate many different situations and versatility in those situations. So what you're getting with Cole is a ability to manipulate at the blue line. He can manipulate moving laterally. He can manipulate feet. He can manipulate sticks. There's a lot of versatility to how he's able to manipulate guys, how he's able to use deception within his game to be able to link those patterns together in many different sequences and many different components of the game. And so with Hutson, again, he's a very intriguing player based on that sense and based on the hockey sense to make proactive reads coming downhill inside the offensive zone. His movement off the line and his movement off the blue line in terms of activation habits and being a threat coming down the walls and coming down the middle, very unique. And he doesn't necessarily use as much Mohawk flair per se like Lane does. Lane likes to use a lot of Mohawks and a lot of flair within his feet. Cole likes to do it more in his puck skills and manipulate with his puck skills. And that's an even bigger factor because sometimes the feet can be a little bit, not to say detrimental, but they can not necessarily help out a player the most at times. It can be a certain situation where players have to understand how to use their puck skills in order to advance the situation because they can't solely rely upon their feet. They have to rely on multiple elements in order to get to where they need to go. So with the puck skills aspect in terms of Cole's game, what's really intriguing about that is his handling skill, his puck positioning, ability to use body position on pucks, understanding how to adapt to the corner battles, adapt to handling pucks in really tight quarters and nifty scenarios. And that's part of the reason why I believe he'll be a key offensive contributor for BU as soon as next season because you look at his puck distribution abilities and at the same time his individual puck handling, how he can niftily avoid traffic and how he can get around pressure and how he can attack narrow seams and still find an out. It's so rare to find that in a defenseman, especially nowadays. There's many defensemen who can do it, but when you're talking about small area handling skill, that's a very advanced aspect of puck handling, especially for defensemen. And it's so intricately defined because when you look at puck skills individually, a lot of it you think of just individual stick handling or stuff like that, or something along the lines of trying to outmaneuver opponent or trying to get around an opponent. But you don't necessarily think of the advanced level skill, the advanced level tight, small area handling skill, because that's the differentiator when talking about Cole Hutson and his game and his puck skills. And he's going to be a power play guy without an absolute doubt. You look at how he played in the power play, how efficient he was as a quarterback, how efficient he is in transition, how efficient he is in the offensive side of the puck. I don't know how you look at this guy and say that's a guy that fell out of the first round. And it boggles my mind because surely, surely could have been a top 20 guy at least, especially with Lane and how Lane's game has trended and the similarities between the two. And they're both going to the same school. To me, it screams obvious, but at the same time, there's a lot of other things that go into that. It's not just on ice play, but at the same time, Hudson's game is so intriguing, and even his two-way play for an offensive defenseman who's slightly undersized, and that's the label a lot of smaller defensemen get, especially offensive-minded defensemen. Can they play a two-way game? Can they play a steady game, or can they be reliable defensively? With Cole, you're getting steadiness. You're still getting defensive habits that need to be fixed a little bit in terms of posture, how he's using his lower body, how he's using his feet, and stuff along those lines. But those are little basic things they can continue to grow and build upon with BU. So there's a lot of layers into his game already and fundamentals offensively that are going to continue to allow him to have success. And I wouldn't be surprised if he only does 2 years at BU and then does a similar path to Lane and then goes straight to the NHL with Washington or wherever else that may be, if something else does happen, but likely Washington since you're drafted by them. And you look at where Lane's game went in year one with BU and how much growth he saw only during that season from his U18 year to that first year at BU, the tremendous amount of difference in development, the tremendous amount of growth and development, so key for him to have that. And I envision a similar scenario with Cole because if he has a really strong first season with BU, you can only really go up from there. And that would fast track his development similarly to Lane's as well. And Lane is obviously a really good defenseman at the NTDP as well, a point producing defenseman at the NTDP too. Cole similarly, he produced really good offensive numbers with the NTDP, and historically he's produced offensively, and he's produced at abnormal rates as a defenseman offensively. And sometimes you're usually able to get a glimpse of what a player can be solely based on their point totals and their past point totals. If they're producing at every level, clearly something is working. Like that's the logic in me saying, okay, something is working. What's working? And then you dive deeper in their game and you try to figure that out. With Cole, I've followed him for quite a few years now, going back to when he was with North Jersey, when the North Jersey AAA in their program. And his game was so dynamic at the youth level. You look at how much more well-rounded he became in the NTDP, a very big difference compared to youth for sure. Because youth hockey, you're never getting consistent defensive results and you're not getting consistent line rush matchups. So Cole could basically go in one-on-one a guy and create his own breakaway opportunities. That's how skilled he was in youth hockey and how abnormal he was compared to other players. He could play offense easily. He was an offenseman, a pure offenseman. He was playing offense all the time, and that's what his team needed him to do. They needed him to, and this goes beyond the Bantam levels and into midget. They needed him to produce and be there offensively all the time. So, granted, they were going to rely upon him very heavily to get to where he needed to go and continue to have that element of dominance at that time during where Cole was so highly, how do I phrase this? He was a highly trending player at that time. And ever since he made it to the NTDP, he's been trending for quite a while. And beyond that point, he just continued to get better, similarly to Lane. And like I said, he's going to be a guy that without a doubt will produce in the NHL. And he'll be a top four guy in the NHL one day for sure.